Hey, and welcome to another set of hand reviews. This is another Teamo8 member, one of our mid-tier players. Anyway, let's get right into it. Very nice starting hand here. So let's, we definitely want to see a flop. So let's see what happens. Okay, a limp. Don't mind a limp at all. When you've got a hand this strong and, the blinds are still low, you generally don't want to risk raising people out of the pot, and stealing the blinds isn't worth much. You want people to come in with their crappy, ace, 10, 8, 5 hands. Okay, we're facing a raise now out of the big blind. That's a show of strength. Now, it's less than 15% of our stack, so we want to take a call. Doesn't look like anyone behind us has a jamming stack, so we're not worried about that. Oh, and we flop a monster. This is a brilliant flop. We want to get as much of our stack in here as we can while bringing other players along with us. Not only do we have a big straight draw here with the combination of the nut low draw, and nut low can't be counterfeited. It doesn't matter what comes. If the next two cards are an ace and a deuce, we still have the nut low. Any combination of low cards, we're going to have the nut low. So yeah, let's see how he works at getting a stack in. Oh, and the player there has done us a solid. He's raised more than the size of our stack and the other player, so yeah, we're really happy with that. And our player makes the call. Yep, nicely played. Great result here, getting it all in with such a huge lead on the flop. Okay, in this next hand, we've got a pair of aces and 8-4 kickers. Although our ace isn't suited, and a low kick is not, it's not terribly brilliant. It can be a little bit tricky to play post-flop because you're uncertain where you're sitting in both the low and the high. But it's a very robust hand. What that means is you don't get knocked out often with it if you go all in, and you tend to win a lot. So let's see what happens. Our preference here is to probably get our stack all in. Okay, well, let's just change things a little. We're facing a raise from a guy with over 20 blinds. Now, the sort of hand he's likely to have here is going to be at least an ace and a deuce, probably a big card and another wheel card. So let's see how our equity stacks up against that sort of hand range. So I've already plugged this into so yep, we're ahead. We're on 58%. We scoop far more often than our opponent's range, win the high more often. Of course, we lose out a bit on the low, but that's to be expected with only having ace-4 for a low. Anyway, let's see if we call. Oh, that was a bit of a mistake there. With that much equity, in Omaha high-low, it's not often you get 60% equity pre-flop. When you get it, you've got to take it. Anyway, let's move along to the next one. Okay, here we are with just over 8 blinds in the big blind. And, fairly reasonable hand here. That 9 is a little bit dead weight. 9, of course, being, the card you least want to see in Omaha high-low when you look at your hand. But anyway, let's see what the action is. Okay, a few limpers. We check, of course. Oh, this is a bit of a tricky board. Sure, we've got top and bottom pair, but top and bottom really isn't worth much in Omaha high-low. Not only that, we've got 4 players to a flop or 3 others, and there's a possible straight already on the board. We do have the nut low draw. We've got no backup lows in case the deuce comes and we get counterfeited. So really, what we really want to do here is see if we can get to the turn cheaply. Let's see what happens. Okay, that's a problem. Players shoved all in for essentially the size of the pot. Yeah. With 2 players left to act behind us, our 2 pair, our top and bottom, we really don't have a lot of equity in the high. We're drawing to a low, so we're sort of drawing to half the pot if we're lucky. With those players to act behind, look, we're just too weak. We really should be laying this down here. But unfortunately, our players shoved. Well, shoving is certainly better than calling. Your only options here are to shove or to fold. He shoved, better than calling. But really, given the lack of equity we've got in this hand, especially with multiple runners, that should have been a fold. Okay, next hand up. We don't have anything particularly spectacular, but we're in the small blind and it folds to us. Okay, so we have an opportunity for a steal here. But before we just rush in and jam our 10, 11, 12 big blinds in, let's think about this for a minute. When called, we're not going to be in great shape if we just jam it. On the other hand, let's say we were raised 3 times the blind. Now, if we do that, say raise it to 3 times, and then our friend over here with a total of 1672, just over 8 blinds, if he jams, we're going to be left with odds of about 2.3 to 1 to call. Now, given that we would have this hand, will have about 45% equity against an ace, deuce, XX range, which is the sort of range someone will jam over a steal, we'd be almost exactly indifferent to calling or folding. What I mean by that is our equity matches our odds exactly, so in the long run it's a break-even play. So I don't think we should be raising to something as much as 3 times. If we min raise and he shoves, then we don't have enough equity to call, so we can get away from it. So here a shove would be better again than a 3 times raise, because we don't want to make ourselves indifferent. So the best bet here, there's not a lot of pressure on at the moment. Personally, unless I have some special read on that player in the big blind, I'm just going to let this pass and go for a fold. Let's see what our player does. Yep, can't complain about that. Okay, now we're sitting in the big blind with a sort of a mid-strengthy sort of hand. Oh, and the big stack jams on us. Well, the problem here is, we're just not quite strong enough to call. This would be an okay hand to jam, but really, I think a fold is indicated here. We're not super desperate. We're going to be left with 7 blinds in our stack, which at this stage, in an 18-seat turbo sit and go, is just fine. Anyway, let's see what our player does. He folds. Yep, nicely played. Okay, now we're facing one of those tricky situations. We're on the bubble, and we've pulled up a fairly decent hand. Ordinarily, with about 8 blinds in our stack, a double-suited hand, pair of queens, our 4 kick is a little bit weak, but we're generally going to... this is generally a hand that we would want to shove. However, there's a bit of an issue here with this guy on the button. With only 2.5 blinds essentially left in his stack, and from watching other hands in this game, our big stack up here is quite likely to call. He's going to call really wide. That's not a problem in the sense of equity, because given that he calls wide, we're going to have a lot of equity, but we're going to be running a risk, maybe about a 25% chance of busting if we jam here. So although I'd normally jam, the fact that we got this little short stack down here and we're on the bubble, we have to think in terms of ICM. I think a fold is probably indicated. Let's see what our player does. And he folds. Yep, I'm happy with that. Okay, and here we are. We're in the very next hand, still on the bubble. Still got a similar situation. We've got this guy down here with 2.5 blinds. We've got a reasonable hand. So let's see what the action is. Okay, the big stack wants to play for stacks. This is a tricky situation. We've got solid equity. We're going to be... no, he's pretty much jamming almost anything. He'll be jamming some high-only hands, but he'll pretty much be jamming anything with 2 low cards, 2 wheel cards for sure. So our equity probably stacks up okay, but given the advantage that we're on the bubble, and given the advantage we've got over this short stack here, I'd actually prefer to go for a fold. Let's see what our player does. Oh, he makes the call. And of course, yep, he is well ahead of that range. Let's plug that into a calculator. Okay, so comparing those 2 hands there, that specific hand, not the range, we're in better shape than we'd usually be. 65% equity. We're only getting knocked out about 20% of the time here against that particular hand, but against the whole range, that he would jam, we'd probably be more likely to get knocked out, you know, something more like around 30% of the time. So I still think 30% of the time, when we got the short stack here on the bubble, it sucks to lay down a good hand, but, you know, I'm a bit split. Depending on how the table dynamics are going, I would fold here a reasonable amount of the time. Calling certainly not a big mistake. Anyway, there we go. There's a few hands. Look out for us next time. If you want to find out more information about what we do at Teamo8, just check us out at teamo8.com. Thanks. Bye for now.